Well, one Democrat who has called for the president to be impeached and did so early on was Minnesota Democratic Congresswoman Ilhan Omar. She came to the United States as a refugee, and she is the first Somali American to be elected to Congress. As part of the so-called squad, she's drawn a considerable amount of attention for her progressive and sometimes controversial views. And we welcome her here to the broadcast. Congresswoman, it's good to have you here.
Thank you so much for having me, Mark.
You heard what Chairman Schiff said. We know more than half of the Democratic caucus supports impeachment now. You're among them. Do you think Speaker Pelosi is being too hesitant?
Well, what I've always said was that it wasn't if we were going to impeach, it's when we were going to impeach. And I think it is okay for some people to have hesitations, for other people to catch up to where some of us have been for a really long time. And I think with Chairman Nadler, he understands that, you know, we have a constitutional duty. And we must exercise that constitutional duty.
Do you think, though, because of the sheer numbers now, I think we're 136 Democrats who support an impeachment inquiry at least, are we at a tipping point where those decisions need to be made?
Yes, and the decisions are being made. This is why they took the vote to begin the investigation, and I really feel confident that they are in the process of getting everybody else who is still lagging to come along.
Now, we said in the introduction, you're controversial. The Republican National Committee has released a video of you. And I want to read you just some of it. You're comparing migrant shelters to dungeons used about 400 years ago in Ghana that you recently visited. And you toured those caves in Ghana recently. It's getting a lot of attention. Did you mean, when you were talking there, to compare U.S. border agents to slave traders?
So I'm only controversial because people seem to want the controversy. What I talked about at our panel that was the plight of Black immigrants was about the experience I was having as I went through the dungeons. There were stories that were being told, and I talked about how at that moment I had an image of what's happening in Libya, as people are being sold. We've all seen that video, that auction of somebody being sold for $400. And then I talked about the separation stories that he told about how families were being torn apart, how children were being separated from their parents, how husband and wife would be forcefully separated. And I said that kind of reminded me of what was happening at our border here.
But you didn't mean it as an attack on U.S. border agents.
Absolutely not. I think this is always the point, right? There's always an implied intent to every conversation I have. And if you listen to the video, one comparison of what the dungeons looked like and people being sold was to what's happening in North Africa, and the other one was of family separations. And of course, we obviously have a crisis here with our family separation policies.
You feel very passionately about immigration. You came to this country as a refugee.
I did.
The Trump administration had a victory in the courts this week because, at least temporarily, they're upholding the ability of the administration to put into place new restrictions on the ability to claim asylum here.
I believe that decision is morally and legally wrong. Seeking asylum is a legal right that people have, and we know that the Supreme Court has been wrong before. They've been wrong in the equal bed separation doctrine decision. They've been wrong in the Dred Scott decision. And so what we now have an opportunity to do as legislators is make sure that we are creating immigration policy that is humane and just.
Well, the Trump administration would say they have to go and implement these regulations, that their hands are being tied because Congress just isn't doing its job.
All right. We certainly in the House have been doing our job since the first day we got there.
So do asylum rights, as you argue, need to be more specifically laid out? Are you working on something like that?
Yeah, we are trying to make sure that we fix our broken immigration system. I mean, people have to understand that the immigration crisis that we have is one that we could avoid. And many of the policies that we've been advocating for, many that are currently sitting at the doorsteps of Mitch McConnell, will create a positive impact on how our immigration system is carried out.
This was the anniversary this week, the 18th, of the 9/11 attacks on our country. And at a ground zero, Remembrance Ceremony, I'll call it, the son of one of the victims stood up and specifically called out language you had used in the past that he characterized as not respectful when referring to the 3,000 people who were killed by Al-Qaeda. You said some people did something, and he put it right there on his T-shirt. Do you understand why people found that offensive?
I mean, so 9/11 was an attack on all Americans. It was an attack on all of us. And I certainly could not understand the weight of the pain that the victims of the families of 9/11 must feel. But I think it is really important for us to make sure that we are not forgetting, right, the aftermath of what happened after 9/11. Many Americans found themselves now having their civil rights stripped from them. And so what I was speaking to was the fact that as a Muslim, not only was I suffering as an American who was attacked on that day, but the next day I woke up as my fellow Americans were now treating me as suspect.
Do you feel like it's been tough for you here in Washington to change your rhetoric, to be less of an activist and try to be a legislator? That sometimes the language you use has gotten in your own way?
I certainly don't think that. You know, when we were celebrating a few nights ago, I talked about how some people would say, Ilhan, you should speak a certain way. Ilhan, you should do something a certain way. And I think that's contradictory really to the purpose of my existence in this space. I believe that my constituents sent me to make sure that I was bringing in a conversation that others weren't having, that I was speaking for people who felt voiceless for a long time. And I think it's really important for us to recognize that it's a new Congress. It's a diverse Congress. And we're not only diverse in our race or ethnicity or religion, but we are also diverse in our perspective, in our pain, in our struggles, and in the hopes and dreams that we have, and the kind of America that we want to shape for all of us.
You were specifically banned by the Prime Minister of Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu, from visiting that country. He faces a very tough election in the next few days. If he doesn't win, are you going to try to go back, and do you stand by your call for a boycott of Israel?
I certainly hope that the people of Israel make a different decision. And my hope is that they recognize that his existence, his policies, his rhetoric really is contradictory to the peace that we are all hoping that that region receives and receives soon. Just right now, if you look at the annexation that's taking place, for many of us in Congress, there has been a long-standing support for a two-state solution. And this annexation now is going to make sure that that peace process does not happen, and we will not get to a two-state solution. I think what is really important is for people to understand that you have to give people the opportunity to seek the kind of justice they want in a peaceful way. And I think the opportunity to boycott, divest, sanction is the kind of pressure that leads to that peaceful process.
Congresswoman, thank you for coming here to Face the Nation.
Thank you so much for having me.